jived with me. There was a thing. Like I feel like education tells you that something is right and wrong, and my initial instinct is like if they say it's right, it's probably wrong. So like you have to. For me, I always tested everything I learned. It's like, okay, they say this chord is good. Well, does it work? Let's try. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But because I went into the academy basically not really reading music and not really knowing anything about jazz, like I just sort of thought like, what should I do as a degree? Like I don't really want to do a degree, but I'll do something. And it was between classical composition or jazz piano. And I thought, well, jazz piano, I'm going to be playing with other people more, and for that reason I did jazz piano, and it was interesting. It was cool. Thank you, man. So Mike was a teacher here, and I had about 2 or 3 lessons with him, and he's an absolutely extraordinary human being, really amazing. And he's very philosophical, and the thing that he gifted me, I think, with is this idea that if you're a teacher, you shouldn't give the students all the answers. You should give them the right questions, and then the tools to find their own answers. Because if a student finds an answer out of their own materials, then that answer belongs to them. And if a student receives a fully fledged answer that's all speckled and lovely, then that never belongs to them until they've tested it. And so for me, Mike, like I asked him this question, or I'll let you translate for a second, but I asked him a question and he did this for me. So I said to Mike, Mike, can you say something about melody? Because I've always been good at harmony and I've always been good at rhythm, but melody was something I found more difficult because you can't manifest it. Melody has to be simple. It has to sing and it has to just be itself. And for me, I was really good at going like, or manifesting stuff, but just singing a melody, especially with composing, just leaving it there, was something I didn't know as much about. So I said to Mike, well, what can you say about melody? Yeah. And so Mike said, Jacob, play me a melody. So I played him a melody, and it was all right. It was like fairly ordinary melody, something like that. And so it's like, it didn't really have any rhythm, didn't really have any form, but it was fine. And he just, I played the melody, and he just said like, Jacob, that's great, okay. And he waited a second for me to make my own judgment, and then he said, okay, Jacob, sing me a melody. Sing me a melody. So I sang him a melody, and by singing it, not playing it, by singing it, it made it have a lot more form. It had this energy, and it had a sense of shape, because when you sing something, often it comes straight from your melodic space, whereas if you play something, it can go straight from your head, And then he left it for a second again, and then he said, Jacob, imagine there's a girl singing a melody in your ear, and just listen to the melody and then sing it back to me. Right, so I sat for a moment and imagined a girl, singing a melody into my ear, and I sang it back to him, and it had all this rhyme in it. It was like, it had this form, or whatever it was, like something. It had a structure, like it had a question and an answer, and I couldn't believe it. It's like, what is coming out of my mouth? And so he said, sing melody. So I sang that melody, and then he said, Jacob, I don't need to tell you anything more about melody. That's the end of the lesson. For me, that was an amazing lesson because he didn't give me the answer to my question. Right? He didn't tell me how to make better melodies. He enabled me to find my own solution, and that solution is sometimes it's like let the shit come out first, and then later you'll find the pure thing. And also, if you enable like another character to be present in the creative process. This is another thing that's been helpful for me actually with songwriting, is if you imagine 2 characters, instead of one character just sort of monologuing like, I feel this and I feel that. And if you imagine there's 2 people and I'm speaking to somebody like, you make me feel like this, or why do you do this? And they reply, there's this amazing interaction, and it feels like there's a meaning that there isn't if I just stand and say how I feel. So instead of having another character in the room, he kind of enabled that to form in my head by imagining this chica, and then having this melody appear, but it's not. What didn't come from me. It came from somewhere else. So I'll definitely do a little bit of harmony. I'll do 10 minutes on harmony for all of you. Harmony. Anyone a fan of harmony? Is you guys like harmony? Okay. Nice. Oh yeah. So I never really had lessons on any instruments until I was about 16. I started going to this jazz camp on piano, and literally all I could play these chords. I could play like and stuff like this, but I couldn't go like, I couldn't do anything like that. There's a reverb on here. No, it's fine. I couldn't do nice man. Yeah, I couldn't, because I could only use 3 fingers, because I was just, so I could, I could make out things, but I could play all these chords, because I love chords, and I understood chords. But I went to have this jazz camp, and they were like, okay, we're going to play Autumn Leaves, And I was like, what do I do over this? So I went like, and gradually, like, I had one lesson with a teacher who said, you should practice scales. And I said, oh, no. And he was like, no, I'm serious, man. Like, check it out. Scales are great because they make you use all 5 fingers. I was like, I don't use 5 fingers. 3 is fine. And anyway, I did practice scales, and I did, this thing. And it was completely foreign to me, but I did for 3 months, and then I gave up. But then I began to use my other fingers more. And so gradually, like, I got better at playing jazz, but I never studied classical piano. The only thing I studied as a kid was classical singing. So I learned how to sing classically as a boy treble, and I sang in operas. That was my first performing experience, was singing in operas, and that was classical music. So that's probably enough for you to translate for a second. It's just that's pretty cool. Yeah. No, seriously. So as a boy, I sang it in operas. I did an opera by Mozart called The Magic Flute. There were 3 little boys, and they were saying, na, 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 na. So I did that.
Hizo una ópera de Mozart que se llamaba Las Tres. Little Flutes.
Yeah, little boys, yeah. No. And then really, really crucially for me, there was an opera by a man named Benjamin Britten. Do you guys know Benjamin Britten? Sweet. So Benjamin Britten is a classical composer from England, across the 20th century, and he has written some of the most amazing classical music ever. And there's this one opera he wrote called The Turn of the Screw, which is a horror story by Henry James. And so I was cast as one of the little boys. It's one of the most commonly done as a boy treble. It's one of the things that you do if you're good. You sing in Miles in The Turn of the Screw. So I did this in 3 different productions. And my brain as a kid was quite interesting, and it was like a sponge. So I memorized the whole opera. I knew every single note of that opera. I could write it out from memory, And the harmony in it is insane. Like the stuff the kind of harmony he was doing. There's this one bit where he goes, there's this 12-tone row, and it's like, and all the strings doing pizzicato, and it goes like. And all these notes are happening at the same time, and it's at the beginning of the opera, and it's, in my experience in my life, it's the most exciting musical moment I've ever experienced. His harmony, like the way he uses harmony, is very English actually, but it takes from all sorts of interesting spaces and places, and for me it was just like, because it was the same time as I was getting into like Earth, Wind and Fire, and stuff like that. So it was like. And then Jacob Collier was born, But so I performed in this opera, and so I had the experience of standing on a stage in front of people, but I wasn't being myself; I was being the character. So it's obviously much. Well, some people would say it's much easier to be a character than to be yourself in front of people, right? Because if you're being yourself, you have to be vulnerable and open and honest, and it's tough scary, to be yourself in front of people. So at that age, I was Miles. I was this other character, and. Man, I could go on and on and on about different experiences singing an opera. I'll tell you one really quick story.
Okay.
Normally, when directors work with a cast, they make all of the people in the cast stand and move around. It's like, okay, we're going to start this scene with you on the left, and you're going to move to the right, and you're going to say, I think this, or something like that. Because opera's, it's all about theatre. But the second, sorry, do you want to translate that for a sec?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
You were told what to do. And,
I wasn't told what to do. Normally, you're told what to do by moving around.
Okay.
But for me, for this one director, the second production I did of this opera, he sat us on chairs. There were 6 people in the cast. So we sat on chairs, and we weren't allowed to stand up from our chairs until the day of the dress rehearsal, of the first performance, or maybe like the day before. And he made us go through the whole opera, just sitting down, singing. We weren't moving. And for every single line of the opera, every single thing, we had to extract a verb like an action that would imply. Basically, like you had to think, what's the intention of that line? And often it would be, to horrify or to scare or something like that. And once we'd extracted the verbs, he made us, just as an exercise, we inverted all of the verbs, right? So we inverted all of the intentions of the opera. And so you'd have a horrifying line, but I'd be genuinely charming somebody. I'm totally charming you. You're just being charmed. And what the audience gets there is this like weird undertone of the original intention. Yeah, so for me, I was 12 years old at this stage, but for me it was like crazy shit. This is like amazing because, again, like if you look at your life, look at the way your life is, people don't say what they mean a lot, right? It's very rare someone says like this, and I completely mean that. It's normally like this, but there's also this and that, but I'm not saying those things. So for me, like having been in a school situation where like I didn't really get people my own age, I didn't really understand them because they didn't think about anything. A lot of people didn't think about it, they just did the school. And for me, like I wasn't that interested in the school unless it was something I was interested in, in which case I was like stupendously interested in it. But this idea of inverting intentions was just like crazy for me because it was like, this makes sense, this is how people are. And creatively, I loved the idea that you could say something without saying the exact thing that you mean, and you can still imply the original thing. Like it's like the mixing thing. It's like having this, and then you can do this. It's exactly the same emotional intention. You start with, I say what I mean all times, and suddenly it's like I say what I don't mean, but you feel what I mean, and it's just like yes, I really like that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Question over here, and then we'll talk about harmony after that. Yeah.
Do you have perfect pitch?
Yes.
¿Tenés
Yeah.
oído absoluto? Sí.
I've tried. I mean, because I've got interested in microtones, I've tried to get even more perfect pitch, so I can sing like between semitones, so like A440, and then A432, that kind of stuff. Like just to be able to get it like in the thing. And for me, it's super exciting to have, because there's no reason why 12 keys it should exist. There's loads more keys, So like, oh man, this is one song where I went to G half sharp. I'll really quickly play that, and then that will take us on to harmony. So so E major, right? Really warm key, really nice. And G major it's bright, but it's more neutral, okay? This is just for me. So everyone has a different idea of what keys feel like. Traditionally, keys with sharps in the key signature can feel quite upwards brighter, and then keys with flats can feel a bit more dark. And so this is a Christmas arrangement of, sorry, go for it. It's hard. It's really hard. It's like saying this tastes better than that, or this tastes bright. You can't say something tastes. It's difficult to put it into words because it's more like a texture in your mind. It's like a mind texture. So, like E major properly, like for me, it feels quite guitar-y because guitars are tuned in E, and so it's quite rich and
mayor
warm.
se siente como guitarrístico.
Yeah, E is for guitars, and G is.
Soles.
I don't know. No, for me, yeah, G is perhaps more neutral, more stable because there are fewer sharps and flats in the key signature. So but then there's a difference between G and G. There's different Gs, So like, so the second G is more mellow maybe, and the first G like really like you can move the emotional thing around. The only reason I'm saying this is just because in my experience, having got to know keys really well across my whole life, it's like if I want to make a slight difference in this key, then you can just lift it. Obviously on the piano you can't do it, but you can do it when you record. You can lift and you can sing just a little bit just by singing that amount lower and that amount higher. Obviously as I don't use like auto-tune and things like that, I'm free. I could do whatever I like with tuning. So you can put that G in different places. And for my next album, I'm doing all the songs are in different places. There hardly any of them are A440. A couple of them are, but it's like just because you can be more emotional if a key is in a different place. And I'm sure some of you guys might have known this, but Hideaway starts with D at A432 A and then ends with up. So at the beginning of Hideaway, right, and then at the end.
Y al final.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So. because it's like, because A432 is indoors, you know, and A440 is outdoors. So it's like you start inside, and then you lift. But no one knows that. I mean, you know, you wouldn't think that. It's just, for me, it's like I wanted to have that extra detail. And if you rewind to the beginning, it feels, why do I want to listen to this again? I feel like I've gone in and I got to get out again. And just that cycle of being emotional with harmony. Like, you can stretch harmony really far. And I've done my best at stretching it as far as it can possibly go in terms of this kind of harmony. And yeah, so for me, moving things between semitones is a really interesting thing to do. So yeah, perfect pitch is useful, but there's more. There's more to notes than dum 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 dum, you know, whatever. Yeah. Just to quickly finish this point, this is a really fun thing. So so this is my arrangement of a song called "In the Bleak Midwinter," which is a Christmas song, and there are 4 verses, and the first verse is in.
Hay cuatro estrofas,
G,
4 versos, y el primero está en,
F, it's in F.
en Fa.
Yeah, F. Right. F. Yeah. And so you're in F and it's really nice, and then you're in F of verse 2 as well. There's all these voices, there's so many voices. And then verse 3. E, so broad and wonderful, you know? Just like, so rich. And then for verse 4, it's like, where can I go that's brighter than E? Well, I got an idea, and I thought, well, it needs to rise. It needs to rise, but it can't rise a major third, because that would put me in A flat, and that's like this. You know, and if I go a minor third, it will put me in G, which it's fine, but it's too neutral. So I thought I'll just put it in the middle. So I thought G half sharp. I'll give it a try. I've always wanted to try to modulate to G half sharp without you realizing, and I got away with it. So. So. B, yeah. 4 magical chords. And then. That's But like, look at the way that feels. The G half, it feels fucking amazing, man. I mean, no one sings in that key, man. And then if you go back to wherever it is, suddenly, like, that's E. Suddenly it doesn't feel so bright anymore, huh? Because you got this, whoa, like it just doesn't exist. But I wanted to see how far I could push it to try and be as emotional as I could. So like now I've added that key to my radar. You know, I know what it's about. Yeah. And for those like really geeky harmony people out there, like the voice leading to get from there to there is insane, man. It's just like crazy.
La conducción de voces para llegar ahí es muy loca.
I didn't use any MIDI to plan this. I just did it by ear. So I had no way of guiding myself, but I know about just intonation. I know about tuning systems. So it's like, we're in B-side, and then it goes, the first chord is, which is D7, 13, flat 9, sharp 11.
Re 7.
And then the second chord, and then the second chord is, which is B major 7 over F sharp.
7 mayor con bajo en fa sostenido.
So, and then A minor 11, yeah.
La menor 11.
And then, yeah. So this, this is a D7 chord and it's going to G major. And so in G major, yeah? So is actually the correct 13th is flatter. So
That was D7.
D7.
Sharp 11. Flat 13.
flat 9,
Flat
9,
nine,
natural 13.
Natural 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this B is flat in the chord, which means that the B can be at A440 and the whole chord can rise, with it still being in tune, with the B still being in tune. The second chord, this is the root of the chord actually, but it's just so. Yeah. So what happens there is because it's the 9th, every 5th that you tune in a just intonation on the piano is 2 cents too small. So actually,